That stuff matters, carved in stone. Every stitch and every tone. Living, loving, grinding through all the nerdy things we do.
What's up, guys? Welcome to That Stuff Matters, your small town grit, big time conversations podcast. And this is a person that I've seen in the community a lot throughout the last decade. And I just feel like he was involved in many aspects. So I really wanted to get him on here to let us know all that he's doing in our community. Everyone say hello to today's guest, Mr. Matt Bowen.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Thank you for being here. Like I said, I've helped you down there at the ambulance district with some stuff, vinyl lettering. I've seen you at the Elks. I've seen you around town at different community events, and I didn't even know all that you were doing. And I'll be honest, Matt. I've had a few people hit me up and say, "You got to talk about the Elks. You got to talk about the Elks," and your name kept coming up, and I was like, "Well, shoot, I just want you to know when I've helped down there at the ambulance district." There were days where I would just be in the garage, I'll call it. You guys are going nonstop. And I don't know if people realize how often ambulances are headed out of there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have about 3,000 calls for service a year, 2,500 reportable calls where we do a patient report or a narrative.
Wow. I'd be working on the lettering and it was like, here a crew goes. And then, before that crew even comes back, there might be another crew going out. It's pretty wild. So there's a lot to you, and I've read through, so I'm really interested to see where this conversation leads us. But let's just start from the beginning. Share a little bit about your childhood and your experiences there that maybe pushed you forward towards a career in fire and EMS.
Yeah, it was really serendipitous in a lot of ways. I never really had a strong desire to do it as a child. We spent 1 year in Phoenix, Arizona. My father was in construction, and so we traveled quite a bit. We spent a year in my third grade in Phoenix. And I remember going to the park one day, and there was an elderly man that had fallen out of his car. He hit his head. He was bleeding profusely. And went to a local house next to the park there and called 911. The fire department showed up and the ambulance showed up and they took care of this guy. And then this ginormous fire captain, come over in his starched white shirt, shook my hand, told me that I did a great job. And it was just a great feeling. But then I really didn't have much exposure to it again. Then when I had moved to Brookfield around 16 years old. And unfortunately, when I was 18 years old, my father passed away from a drug overdose. He had been clean for 6 or 7 years and unfortunately relapsed. And if you're familiar with addiction at all, a lot of times if you try to do the same amount that you were doing before, sometimes you take too much and overdose. So that was really impactful and a huge turning point in my life that we can get further into. But it just crushed me as a human.
Wow.
And then fast forward, I was working at Dura Automotive Systems here in town. Mm-hmm. I'd started there actually before I turned 18. And Wally Westbrook was the man that hired me. He was the HR guy at the time. And I worked there. Vern Cordray was my supervisor. And I also ran into a gentleman that you might know, Scott Chrisman. Uh-huh. And I was terrified of him at first. He's this giant person.
Giant guy.
Didn't talk much, didn't smile much. And a mutual friend of ours, Caleb Adelsberger, that's common spelling Adelsberger, he said, "Hey, why don't you come and sit at our table?" And so I was like, "Sure." So I come over and sit at his table, and we became friends, and we started playing paintball together. There was a paintball field down south of town. There was another family over by Laclede that had a field set up. Mm-hmm. And we just instantly became friends. We became duck hunting partners. We'd go on float trips together, things like that. And one day when we're sitting there at the table, he says, "Hey, do you want to be on the fire department?" I said, "I don't know. What do you got to do?" And he's like, "Well, you just come to a meeting a couple times a month and carry a pager around. And whenever there's a fire, then you'll respond." And I said, "Do I get one of those cool blue lights to put on my car. What about one of those things that goes on the license plate on the front of my car? It says fire department. I was like, yep. And I said, cool, I'm in.
I'm in.
So showed up and started working with the fire department and instantly loved it. Not only was it a great group of guys, after losing my father, I was kind of floating through life. I didn't really have a lot of direction.
Yeah.
And they really helped mentor me through the fire process. And through a grant, we were able to get our firefighter 1 and 2 training here at the station. And
What year would this have been, you think?
This would have been 2003, I believe.
Okay.
2002, 2003, somewhere.
Okay.
And Daryl Wright, who was the instructor at the time through Grand River Tech, he was also the, I believe, assistant chief at Chillicothe Fire at the time. He was teaching the firefighter 1 and 2 class. And we were sitting there one day, and there was one of the guys, I believe he was from either Kearney or Liberty, but he already had his paramedic license, and he was getting his firefighter 1 and 2. And Daryl had made a comment. He's like, man, you can just write your own ticket, can't you? You can go wherever you want. And I was like, man, that's cool. And he had come over to us, Scott and I both, towards the end of the class. We're getting ready to wrap up and test. And he said, hey, you guys might be interested in our EMT class or paramedic class over in Chillicothe. And I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. And at the time, I think the class was somewhere around $800 or $1,000 for EMT. And paramedic was 9 times that much. And so it might as well have been $1 million to me at the time.
Oh, man.
And I was like, man, that'd be really cool, but I don't know how that's ever going to happen. And so about the same time, we were informed that the business at Dura was going to be sent over to Mexico, and they were closing the plant. And we were just devastated.
Yeah.
We're like, what are we going to do? And so Green Hills had come in. They'd sent some representatives to talk to us, and they said, hey, we will, because it was sent to Mexico, it was kind of covered under the NAFTA umbrella. And there was money there to retrain you in pretty much anything you wanted to do. Of course, you had to take an ACT type test, and based on your score, then you had these options.
Oh, like an aptitude type thing. Okay.
And fortunately, I aced the test, got the highest score in the area at that time. And they said, what do you want to do? And through coordination with Grand River Tech and North Central Missouri College, I said, I want to be a paramedic. And they're like, okay, done. And so as the plant was closing, I was stepping into that world, and they were amazing. They paid for everything. They paid for the class. They paid for my mileage. They gave me a monthly stipend. They paid for my clinical time, because you have over 600 hours of clinical time that you have to do for paramedic. And so it was a godsend. Wow. and made it possible. And at about that same time, I was still working for the fire department and going to class, and we would help set up landing zones for helicopters when they would come in. And immediately I was standing there in my fire gear watching the helicopter land, and I was just mesmerized. Like, that's what I want to do. Wow. And so from that point forward, nothing else mattered. I don't remember my EMT license number because it didn't matter. I don't remember much about the first 3 years of my paramedic career, other than I needed to get as much experience as possible because my goal was to be on that helicopter. And so I at the same time, I was hired at Lynn County Ambulance. Sean Hill was the director at the time, or the operations manager. Carolyn, I forget Carolyn's last name, but she was the administrator. And he was nice enough to give me a job as an EMT, understanding that I was going through medical school at the time. And we would work 48-hour shifts, and then we would be off for 96 hours. And during that 96 hours, I would go and do my clinical time, mostly in St. Joseph or Liberty. And so it was a whirlwind of activity for those 2 years. And then in 2006, I graduated with my paramedic license. And I just wanted to add as many credentials as I could over the next 3 years with the goal of being on that helicopter. So immediately once I got my license, I was like, man, I'd have no idea what I'm doing. So I went down to Boone Hospital in Columbia, got a job there, which is a much higher volume service. It was not an unordinary thing to run 12 calls in 12 hours. So you were just one call after another.
Yeah.
High acuity calls, lots of violence down there, car wrecks, heart attacks, strokes. And so for that 3 years, I just packed in as much knowledge and experience as I could and made as many contacts as I could, networked as much as I could within the healthcare system, trying to get to know as many people as I could, tried as hard as I could to leave a good impression. And the day that I got my 3 years in, which was the minimum at that time to be on the helicopter, I turned in my application. And I didn't really, I don't know that I realized it at the time, but the director of the helicopter was the same flight paramedic that I saw get off of the helicopter that first time.
Really?
Adam Bruner was his name. And I just thought he was walked on water as far as I was concerned. And it was kind of a strange full circle turn of events. So I worked there for a number of years, became what is called the base clinical lead, which is kind of the top clinical position within the helicopter. Trained all the nurses and the medics for several years. Ended up transitioning to another base in Sedalia for about a year. And then ultimately went to Fort Madison, Iowa, again, filling the clinical lead position there. Was very involved in the educational process. And they moved their headquarters from West Plains, Missouri to O'Fallon, Missouri. So I was constantly going back and forth to O'Fallon, training our new folks. It's a 6-month process for our new folks on the helicopter. And when I filled that role in Kirksville at the time, there was, I think, only 2 full-time people that were still there, and the base was kind of crumbling. We got a new program director is what they call them. Adam had actually left and went back to the ground ambulance at Adair County. And over the course of 11 months, I think I trained 9 people in their 6-month period. So they were stacked on top of each other. So that was a whirlwind of activity there. Ultimately, they were successful. They're still successful today. They've now partnered with MU. I think that aircraft is MU-4 up in Kirksville now. Vibrant program. And they've expanded into Moberly. MU-1 is there. And very, very successful program there. And then my cleaning business, which we can talk more about if you want.
Yeah.
It kind of been a side business for me when I started at 18 doing that. Actually started before that, but about 18 is when I started the actual business. And I started doing strip and wax for grocery stores. I don't know if you know Roger Kelsey.
Sounds familiar.
He had kind of plugged me into the Save-A-Lot stores in the area.
Okay.
So I would strip and wax floors.
So you started this, was it just you?
Yep.
It was just you going and
Yep.
stripping like. Funny story, like one of the first jobs I ever had was there used to be a Sears here. And like the first thing I did was that floor had been waxed for years and never cleaned off. And they made me just start by like cleaning the wax off the floor. And it was awful. So you started a business doing that?
I did, yeah. So over time, it kind of grew and grew. And even while I worked at Dura, I was doing that. I would get up around 1 or 2 in the morning, and I would go and clean banks and floors and things like that. And then at 5 a.m., I would go to Dura. And a lot of my coworkers at the time were like, man, you got too many irons in the fire. I'm like, man, I got to make hay while the sun's shining. So that side business kept me going through paramedic school. And then as I got my license, I still had that going as well, but it wasn't a main source of income. And then when I was in Fort Madison, it had grown to a point where I had employees and I was in a couple different states at that time.
Okay.
And I wasn't doing any of the work myself.
You just had crews that went out and did it.
Out and doing it. And an opportunity came to purchase a franchise, and the business just exploded. And I had a decision to make. Either stay on the helicopter or run my business full time. And it had exploded into around $80,000 a month, I believe is what the income was. And So I stepped away from the helicopter. I went part-time, which is not an easy thing to do because the training requirements are still the same for a part-timer. And so you've got your focus on your business, but you still got to be focused on the helicopter. And that was tough.
Right.
Did that for about 6 months and then ultimately stepped away entirely from EMS for almost 2 years. And it really wasn't fulfilling me as a person. I didn't feel like that was what I was supposed to be doing. I was good at it,
Mm-hmm.
and the business was successful, but it just really wasn't fulfilling.
You know, and I don't think people talk about that enough. Like, you can be really good at something and you just heart isn't in it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's when you kind of have to have a talk with yourself. And I know reading through some of that stuff you sent me, like, that's a big part of what you believe in too. Like, you got to follow your heart and do what you're passionate about.
You do. And I think Thoreau actually said it best. He said, most men live lives of quiet desperation. And a little less pretentious way of saying that is, you're familiar with the movie Step Brothers, one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, sure.
You remember the scene where
Did we just become best friends?
Yes. You want to go practice karate in the garage? The scene where they're at the Catalina wine mixer and the dad is talking to Brennan and he's talking about his dinosaur. He used to pretend to be a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Mm-hmm.
And he just tells him, he's like, don't lose your dinosaur.
Oh.
And so that is something that I try to live my life by. Find your passion, something that you're good at and passionate about. If you can find that alignment,
Right.
then you will ultimately be successful and have a fulfilling life, in my opinion.
Well, at the end of the day, you have to pay your bills. But I always tell people, like, I think we teach kids at a young age to judge success incorrectly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's cool to have nice things and you want to have your bills paid. But if you don't wake up in the morning and, you know, enjoy what you're doing, are you really successful?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got to watch how you're looking at your life.
For sure. And so I was stepping away from EMS for about 2 years, and I'm sitting at an all-inclusive resort in Mexico, enjoying the sunshine and just kind of on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And I get a phone call. Actually, I think it was a Facebook message, and it was from Adam Bruner. And he said, hey, man, what are you doing? What have you been up to? I haven't talked to you for a while. And I said, oh, I'm just sitting down here in Mexico, soaking up the sun. And he's like, well, you still doing anything in EMS? I said, no, not really. And I'm kind of deciding whether or not I'm going to renew my license. So you have to renew your license every 2 years.
Okay.
You can do that 2 different ways. You can either test, which nobody wants to take that test twice, or you can do continuing education units or CEUs, which there are a certain number required and certain topics like cardiology and trauma and obstetrics that you have to do within that 2-year period, and then you can renew.
Okay.
And this was March, and the deadline for renewal is in the end of March, usually, for my license anyway. And so I'm sitting there in Mexico, and he says, man, it would really be a shame if you don't continue to do that because you are really good at it
Mm-hmm.
and you've got something. And that meant a lot to me coming from him because I always looked to him as a mentor and looked up to him. And I'm like, man, maybe you're right. And so I made a decision then and there. And so I'm in Mexico. On the keyboards in Mexico are a little different. They got a few extra characters.
Uh-huh.
And the internet's weird down there. So I'm trying to navigate the weird Mexican internet and the weird Mexican keyboard and doing my CEUs the end of March at the 11th hour, trying to get my license renewed.
Uh-huh.
Ultimately renewed it. And sadly, my first time back on an ambulance was covering for his funeral. He had sudden cardiac event while he was on duty. And so I covered the ambulance so that his crew could attend his funeral. And it was a full circle thing, heartbreaking, but ultimately his impact on so many people will have lasting effects for years and years to come. I mean, he was such an impactful person and very influential in my life course. And once I got back on the ambulance, just something lit up again. The fire started burning again.
Really?
And I was like, man, this is what I got to do.
So here you are. You had a successful business. You started on your own. You had done all of the work with the helicopter. And when you came back to the EMS side, you just felt like this fire like kind of lit back in you. You didn't even hadn't even picked up on it was missing, maybe?
Mhm.
Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Wow.
So, got back into EMS, and about that same time, an opportunity presented itself for the chief or administrator position here at Lynn County,
Uh-huh.
where I started. And I was still in contact all the time with Scott. And even though I traveled all over the place, I always felt like Brookfield was my home because I'd moved here around 15 years old, 15, 16. Really, those formative years of my life, Brookfield had a huge impact on me. So I was like, man, at first I wasn't going to put my application in. I didn't feel like I was qualified. And I just saw many of the same people that I had worked with originally were still there. And I decided that I had to at least try
Mm-hmm.
because it was something that really meant something to me. And came in and interviewed, ultimately was offered the job. At the time, I was working full-time at the fire department in Excelsior Springs.
Okay.
And I had met my daughter's mother and, well, reconnected because we'd been friends for years. And decided to move back to Brookfield.
Wow.
And that was now 4 years ago in January.
Man, what a story of like a lot of full circle moments.
Mhm.
And I just, because Brookfield means so much to me, like I think it's cool that it led you back here, that
Mhm.
you know, good and bad, the people you met and the things you experienced, you chose to give back in such a huge way to the community. I know you've said that the forge of life is hot, and we can either melt or get stronger.
Mhm.
You know, that's something that I read and really kind of hit me. So do you feel like that took shape in your own story quite a bit?
For sure. I think that many events, not only in my life, but many people's lives, they have the potential of destroying you
Mm.
or making you stronger. My father's death was very impactful. EMS was very impactful on me. And I think that many people experience those things and they have a choice of either becoming stronger and using it as a stepping stone
Mhm.
or just allowing it to crush them. And hopefully they choose that first path.
Right.
And then it becomes not a damaging story, but something that they were able to use and then move forward and make it a positive.
Life is really not determined by the things that happen to you, but how you respond to those things.
Yes, absolutely.
That's interesting the way you phrase that, because you know, like our gym is named Power Forge
Mhm.
because a big part of what we believe was, you know, life experiences forging you and making you stronger and developing that iron, whether that mentally or physically. Um, no matter who you are, where you're raised, you're going to experience hardship, and it's all about how you respond to it. I mean, everybody's struggling.
It really is. I think if you can choose your adversity, I think that's where the power comes from. Because if we just search out a life of comfort, that's not going to get us any kind of fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
And, poverty is hard. Um, Physical fitness is hard. And if you can choose your adversity, then the rest of your day is easy, in my
Boy,
opinion.
yeah, it's well, I listen to a lot of Goggins, you know, David Goggins,
Mhm.
and do something hard every single day, and stay hard and all that kind of stuff. It's
He's
very
at far end
true.
of the spectrum. I think he just finished something like a 250-mile race.
Yeah, I don't know. He just keeps
He
doing
just keeps
crazy
going,
stuff.
and he doesn't have any cartilage. It's like bone on bone in his knees.
No, have you ever seen his feet?
Oh,
It's awful.
it's so funny to watch him.
Um, so, man, there's so much here. Let me see. Let me make sure I don't want to miss anything. Um, just all these life experiences, the factory's closing, and that was a big point for Brookfield when that factory closed. And
It
I
was.
didn't know that there were opportunities like that. Again, you made a choice there, and look how that
Mhm.
directed your life.
Yeah, and it could have gone a lot of different ways. I mean, fortunately, I was able to offer employment to a lot of the folks that I worked with there. They worked with me for a lot of years. One of the the employees just retired. She had worked for me for over a decade now,
Wow.
and she just retired, her and her husband. And that was fulfilling, being able to give back to them. And
I bet.
and it really could have taken a lot of different paths. At the time, I was kind of floating. My father had died. My job was going away. I didn't know where I was going. And I remember a pivotal point. I'm not sure what year it was, but I think it was somewhere around 2021. And I was just floating, getting blown around in life. And I'd had a motorcycle since I was 16, something I
Mhm.
really enjoy. And I had multiple speeding tickets. And as you're aware, in Missouri, you have a point system.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to the point where I didn't have any points left on my license.
Mm.
And I ended up in the court system. And Terry Shannon at the time, I think he was a prosecuting attorney, perhaps. And he was handling one of my ticket cases. And he's like, "You don't have any points left. And if you continue on this path, you're going to end up in the system. And you have a choice to make." He said, "I encourage you to not be one of those people that sits up at the park all night and drinks and gets tickets and gets involved with the law." He said, "Choose a different path." And that really hit me hard. And I did some community service in order to get my license back. Ironically, a lot of it was done up at the fire department, washing trucks. And yeah, it really sent me on a different trajectory.
Yeah.
And I remind him of that regularly, say thank you to him.
Terry is a great guy. That family is a great family. I wonder, with you saying that, I wonder how many lives he's probably impacted like that.
Couldn't even say.
Uh, it's pretty incredible, really.
Yeah. And now his son is back here at the clinic as a PA, and
Oh yeah,
he's actually my primary care physician.
really?
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah, very cool. Um, that's like local mentors like that can make such a huge impact. We always talk on the show about like giving back to your community, and I think when I get online, I get frustrated because I think people's idea of giving back is like if you can't, give money, then what impact can you have? And then you get this mindset where it's like, well, they should do this, they should do that. But you can give back to your community in so many ways, and being a mentor is huge. And I know that's something that you really believe in. You know, being a mentor, finding a mentor. Tell us a little bit about that because I know you said that you should always try to find someone that's kind of doing what you want to do and help lead you.
Yeah, there's two pieces to that. So being a mentor is something that a lot of times happens organically, and we may not even realize it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Terry's interaction with me probably took 5 minutes, and it had nothing to do with money. It was simply 5 minutes of his time and a few kind words. And I think that if we can not underestimate the impact that we have on other people, because if you're anything like me, you suffer with imposter syndrome all the time. And as your success grows or as your impact grows, it's hard to realize that you might have people that are looking up to you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a responsibility that you have to take and say, okay, I'm going to make sure that I put my best foot forward every day because somebody's watching. It's not just your kids, your family, but it's the kids in the neighborhood. It's people that are younger than you. Maybe you're the person that somebody's looking at and saying, hey, I want to follow that path.
Mm-hmm.
And the second piece is that trajectory and finding what you're passionate about and looking for a mentor and approaching that person, which is scary in itself, and saying, hey, how did you get where you've gotten to in life? What can I do to kind of follow your path? Because we don't have to always reinvent the wheel. Somebody's already paved that path for us,
Mm-hmm.
probably several times over. And just ask them. And you might have to ask a couple different people, but somebody's going to say, sure, yeah, I'll tell you how I got here.
Yeah.
And then you can learn from their mistakes and hopefully not have to repeat them yourself.
Yes.
It just makes it exponentially easier to attain success if you follow in somebody else's path that's already done the hard work.
Yeah. I mean, I worked I worked for a company that we preserved history. We did, like historical preservation books and things of that nature. And it really drove home to me the importance of preserving history because sometimes you feel like your problem is so unique to you and your situation, and you're afraid to look for guidance or ask for help, but someone has experienced what you're going through or what you're trying to do. And if you can put yourself in a room with those people, it'll just make your journey so much easier. And that's what life's all about. I really feel is helping guide that. And what you said, your first point there, it's so amazing to me that we can be like battling our own journey, and maybe we're at a point where someone is watching, and just as you said, in that 5-minute interaction, um, you may have someone that is going through something very difficult, unimaginable, and they might look up to you. You don't realize it, but the way you choose to speak to that person and encourage that person can totally alter a future choice that person makes. That's crazy to me, and I'm really glad you brought that up. Um, yeah, I think it's huge in our community that we just need more mentors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you've you've traveled a lot. I know that is also something that you are passionate about. Tell us a little bit about your mindset for travel and how that shapes our personal, perception and things of prejudice and the way we empathize with people and judge people. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think travel is something that is vitally necessary for the human condition. When I first got my paramedic license, I was a single guy at the time, and I made a decision that every month I was going to either travel somewhere I'd never been or buy a gun. So I did that for a few months, and it was.
Did you collect a lot of guns, or did you
I
do a lot of
did. I
traveling?
did both, and traveling just gets you out of your bubble. And if you
Yeah.
grow up in the same small town, you see the same people every day. It's easy to get into an echo chamber, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And you tend to surround yourself with people that are like-minded and have the same opinions as you. And it's really easy to become tribal. And it's something that's hardwired into our physiology. And traveling gets you to open up your viewpoint a little bit into other ways of living and other types of food, other environments. Weather is a big thing. You live in the Midwest, we're kind of used to how things are.
Mm-hmm.
Travel down towards the equator or somewhere even farther north, and you see an entirely different way of living. And then when you are watching the news on TV, then it helps you to be able to see things through a different lens, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And getting yourself out of that bubble that you're comfortable in, I think, is vitally important. And it doesn't have to be some extravagant type trip. I mean, South Missouri is an entirely different world than here. It doesn't take many hours to get there.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take a lot of money. And then once you get there, make sure that you connect with somebody that is local. Ask questions. Go see the historical areas that are around where you're traveling to. Get to know the people there. Try different food that you may not have ever considered trying before. Something that maybe makes you a little uncomfortable. And it's, in my opinion, the spice to life. It makes things so much better.
Where's your favorite destination that you've traveled to so far?
That's a hard one. Ireland was pretty impactful. It was beautiful.
Cool.
Not only the geography, but the history there. Seeing buildings that are hundreds and hundreds of years old. In the U.S., we don't see a lot of those. But
Right.
go over there, and there's castles that are 1,000 years old, and it was beautiful, beautiful country.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've never been that direction. When I was at the end of my high school days, I chose to go on a missionary trip to Mexico, and it's the only one I've been on. But I will say that it really made an impact on me because we did get to see firsthand a very different side of the world and people in need, and living in homes, families living in homes not much bigger than this room, dirt floors, no doors. And we would hand out food. And as you said, yeah, get uncomfortable and then see how you feel about your life.
Yeah.
It'll change you.
And I think it will fill you with gratitude a lot of times when you come home.
Yeah.
Many times, if you stay in the same small town for your entire life, you kind of have a mindset. People tend to have a mindset that, oh, I want to get out of this town, or this town stinks, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go do some bigger, more exciting things with my life. And that may be true, but a lot of times, at least in my experience, traveling made me appreciate living here more than if I had never traveled.
Yeah.
And it makes it nice to come home.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So true. I've been from Canada to Mexico, Florida to the Great Lakes, and I always tell people I really like Missouri and I really like Brookfield. And I know that just sounds crazy to some people, but gratitude is so important. I think not only understanding that and having gratitude in your own situation, but then also showing gratitude to people who help you in your journey and appreciative of their efforts. So true. Talking about the local community, I know a big part of what you do is the Elks organization here in town. And I have been at the Elks more times than I can count. Grew up in that, like as far as playing music and DJing events there. And it's made a huge impact in the community. Tell us a little bit about what you do at the Elks and what the Elks does as an organization here in town.
Okay. So currently I'm what's referred to as the exalted ruler.
Sounds fancy.
And sounds fancy. It's a bit pretentious, but we're a fraternal organization. I say fraternal, but women are more than welcome to become members as well. In fact, our last exalted ruler was a woman as well. And it's a charitable organization that just gives back to the community as much as we possibly can. And this local community, tens of thousands of dollars a year gets funneled back into the community through community organizations, donations, scholarships to students. And yeah, I'm very proud of everything that they do. They're uniquely American. You've got to be an American citizen. You've got to believe in God. So if you don't fit those two things, then you can't become a member. But it's a great group of people that I think our main mindset is, how can we help? What can we do to help?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a ton. Like in October, we're running a sock drive. And you don't realize how important socks are until you travel somewhere where people don't have socks. Or you are in a school where there's a child who doesn't have socks to wear, and how important that is.
Yeah.
It's something so small that we take for granted. And so if anybody has any extra socks, we take some brand new ones. So in the course of the month of October,
Wow.
drop them off at the
They
lodge.
just drop them off at the lodge?
Drop them off at the lodge, yep.
All types and sizes?
All types and sizes. We just finished a school supply drive, which hundreds and hundreds of dollars of school supplies that we were able to give to the schools.
That's awesome. And I just saw a weekend or two ago, there's your big soccer event. I saw there's a ton of kids out there kicking goals for soccer there.
We have the soccer shoot a couple times a year, and we also have a hoop shoot for basketball.
Okay.
Yep. And the kids, depending on how they perform, they can travel on to the state, and then there's also a national competition.
When I was a kid, I actually won the Elks hoop shoot and got to go on to a next level. Boy, that brought back a memory I totally forgot about.
Hopefully a good one.
Well, yeah, I did good here, but then when I went off, I didn't do so great, but I guess that's part of it. Also, another venue here in town that people can rent and use. We're fortunate. I think back through all the years and decades I've been here, a lot of like big events in my life have happened at the Elks Ballroom. Very cool. How can someone become a member if they're interested in that?
So all you got to do is have a member propose you. We have a membership application, and if you've got a series of questions that you answer: are you a veteran? Are you a U.S. citizen? Do you believe in God? Have you committed any felonies? We don't allow any
Mhm.
felons in. And if all those answers are answered correctly, and a small fee, $25, and then you are voted on at the following month's meeting. And if it's a favorable vote, then you're in. Our
So,
dues are fairly inexpensive. It's less than $90 a year.
okay.
And you get full access to the lodge and all the activities. And
Very
you
cool.
can bring a guest with you several times before they are encouraged to become a member. If you have a spouse, we have a ladies' auxiliary. Lady Elks are very active
They are.
and very charitable. And you don't have to become a full member if you're a spouse or a female. You can just be in the auxiliary if you prefer. And then you can come and go, and you get access to the lodge.
Very cool. So just get to know a member and
Mhm.
and you work your way through there. Very cool. Very cool. Um, let's see here. That in I think like something like that ties right into like getting outside of your bubble.
Mhm.
Because when you join an organization like that, inevitably you're gonna start to surround yourself with people that you probably didn't in your day-to-day life, and you can learn so much doing that, wouldn't you say?
For sure.
Um, I think of some of the characters I know that are members down there, and I'm sure that meeting some of those people has changed your opinion on
For
certain
sure.
things.
Yeah, and it really helps you it helps you in life and business too, because you realize that not everybody thinks the same. And you've got to learn to manage different personalities. And especially when you get a lot of big personalities, type A. We're blessed at this lodge with many past state presidents as well.
Uh-huh.
So just a wealth of knowledge, the history of the Elks and how things were done in the past, and history about this area. It's just hundreds and hundreds of years of experience there that you can gain from.
Yeah.
And talking about mentorship, there's tons of opportunities there for a young person to get plugged into that history and actually make a difference in their own community.
Because I think I also remember and everything. You said that who we choose to walk through life with is very important as far as your friends, your mentors, your spouse, your partner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, getting outside of your bubble, that's going to ultimately impact how you choose those characters.
Yep. I think that somebody said that the five people that you spend the most time with are who you ultimately end up becoming, that have the biggest impact on who you are. So you got to be really careful about who you surround yourself with, your spouse being one of the most important ones.
Yeah.
Who you choose to partner with is a huge decision.
Oh, that's 100% true. I wouldn't be the person I am if I didn't have, my wife,
Mhm.
helping me make decisions in life's journey along the way.
Yeah. Checking your ego every once in a while.
Yeah.
Like, hey, honey, this might not be a good idea.
Yeah. And you need people like that, and
Sure.
you can't get upset when people maybe, I'm not going to say question you, but um, have those questions, because you need people to kind of check you along the way, friends, family, your spouse, to help guide that journey appropriately.
Yeah. And having that balance is important, because if you're like me, that type A personality, I'm biased towards action. I get a good idea and I'm like, yep, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then having those friends and your spouse around you that maybe have a more conservative viewpoint, like, hey, let's pause for a second. What about this over here?
Yeah.
Did you think about this? Having that is so vital to keep you from going over a cliff accidentally.
For
Because
sure.
I'll just hit the gas and go.
All gas, no brakes.
Yeah.
So you also, we're talking about like making these life decisions. You chose to go back to college later in life. Is that right?
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about that, because that's kind of a whole nother chapter you introduced.
Yeah, and through the Grand River Tech and North Central Missouri College partnership, we were able to apply quite a few credits towards your associate's degree.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't initially take advantage of that when I first went through and I graduated in 2006. I didn't go back until 2014, I think.
Wow. Okay. So 8 years later.
Yep. Finished my degree. My son was born. I was working full time, still doing the business. And it was tough, but I did the majority of the classes were online. They made it very easy. And now I've actually went back again to do my bachelor's. So working on
cool.
that currently.
And what's your focus on this time around?
So I want to focus on emergency management, EMS management. That's really where my passion is.
Wow. A lot of this goes back to when Adam called you that day, and what a life altering moment that was. Because here you are, you're back in college, and I think of how that call has probably impacted our community because you're making decisions on how our community receives care in timely fashion, and it's just wild to me, I guess.
Yeah. And again, just a few minutes, a few texts, and one phone call is all it took. Not a lot of time.
Yeah.
No money exchanged hands. Just a few kind words.
Man, that's really powerful because I think about like all those times we're probably sitting around and maybe you kind of get this thought in your head like I should reach out to this person I knew, or I should see how this person's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you have those inklings, you should really follow up on them, don't you feel like?
I believe so, yeah.
It's like someone's telling us that you could make a life altering choice there. You've done so much. I just have to ask, like, how do you balance? You've done so much, and I can only imagine the hard times, the things you experience. Losing your father, when you're in school and you have work, you have your own business. These problems, these little fires you need to put out. Not no pun intended, being a firefighter, but how do you balance all of that?
It's difficult, and it required, at least for me anyway, a fundamental change in my mindset because I was very much an independent person. I had to do the work myself. And it was a long course to get to that point because like with my cleaning business, I was the only one doing it for years. And you hit a point where you can either work faster or sleep less or a combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually it's a diminishing return. Your body starts to fail when you're not getting enough sleep, when you're not taking care of yourself. If you work faster, your quality kind of goes down a little bit. And you hit a point where you've got to make a choice to relinquish control and trust other people. You've got to learn to delegate. And in some aspects, maybe the quality goes down a little bit for a short time because nobody's going to do the same job for your business that you are.
Right.
Nobody's going to care about it as much as you are. But you cannot accomplish more without trusting other people to help you along the way. There's a saying that faster alone, further together.
Mm.
You can only do so much work with one tool, and I'm only one tool. And so to answer your question directly, delegating and trusting a team of people that are equally capable to do more than I could do alone is the only way that I can accomplish anything. Yeah. And I'm blessed with an amazing team of people in all aspects of my life.
Yeah.
And sitting back and just trusting them, giving them the vision, but then trusting them to use their own skills and their own tools to do possibly, and most generally, a better job than I could do by myself.
Do you feel like getting outside of your bubble has ultimately helped you make decisions better about who you choose to empower?
Absolutely. And the interview process, whether it's the janitorial company or whether it's the ambulance, that interview process is so vital. And it's multifaceted. It's not just an application. It's not just a face-to-face interview. It's not just the orientation process. We're constantly reevaluating that person in many different ways at the beginning of the relationship, just to see what kind of person they are. And I think the biggest thing that makes me choose somebody is trust. trusting that they are going to care about whatever we're doing
Mm-hmm.
the same amount or more than I do. And yeah, trust is the biggest thing.
Yeah. I would imagine so, because you're doing so many things. You gotta trust people.
Mhm.
Um, uh, so tell us a little bit about your current role as director. Is that what it would be at the
So the
EMS or
title is administrator,
administrator?
director of EMS, chief, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
And so we have a board of directors, and there's 6 people, and they represent different areas of our county. And I am their employee.
Okay. I didn't
And
know
then
how that worked.
and then I hire the rest of the team. And we have amazing group of people. If you've had any interaction with them on the ambulance, you know that they're just top-notch humans. And they care even more so about our patients than I do.
Mhm.
They take my passion and then amp it up another degree. And I always use the adage of a toolbox. I don't want a toolbox full of screwdrivers.
Mm-hmm.
You can only get so much work done with a hammer. So
Right.
you got to have a multifaceted toolbox. And our shift leaders are the ones that really lead the culture at the ambulance. And they're so passionate, but they're passionate about different things. We've got one that's really passionate about quality and making sure that everything is just so. We have another one that's passionate about mental health. We have another one that's passionate about training and education. And they just each bring something different to the table. And then we have Scott, who is my operations manager, and he's kind of over them.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of directs the day-to-day stuff. My assistant, Ashley, amazing. I couldn't do anything without her.
Mm-hmm.
And she does. And in fact, we have to slow play sometimes the work that we give her because she's so fast.
Really?
Like, I don't need this done today. Maybe next week.
That's you can't put a value on how important
You
that
really
is to have in
can't.
your organization.
You really can't. And I always use the compass or the gauge of, would I want this person taking care of me or my daughter, my loved ones?
Very true.
And if the answer isn't resoundingly yes, then they're probably not a good fit.
Yeah.
It's not that they're a bad person or that they might not fit in somewhere else, but they're not a good fit here.
So you brought something up that I wanted to talk about, or wanted to ask you about, because as I said, when I was out there working on the ambulance, and I'm seeing people come and go, come and go, come and go, and talking with Scott. So something that I don't know if enough people think about is, like, you go on these calls and you experience someone at their most vulnerable point, their weakest moment, and you see so much, and you see people who lose a battle with what they're fighting. Mental health has to come into play. And how do you approach that as an organization? Because that would be hard if I'm sending out a team of people I love, the people you chose, and they see death and hardship, and then they have to go right on the next call. That stuff sticks with them. What do you do?
Yeah. So the average person sees maybe 1 to 3 really traumatic events in their life. And these are life-altering events, stuff that derails you, whether it's the loss of a loved one or a serious injury. And the average first responder sees over 200. And so, to your point, how do you make them resilient and able to respond to that very next call?
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a proactive approach to it. It can't be reactive, or you're going to be behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
So one of our shift leaders, he heads up our peer support program, a peer support team. And we have some metrics in place that stimulate a response immediately. If we have a child death or multiple injuries, multiple deaths, a big car wreck, say, then we will proactively go to them and talk to them and say, how are you doing? We have a structured debrief process that goes over a couple weeks. And then we also have an anonymous phone number that they can call. We have a locked box where they can put a note in and ask for help. We have a network across the state of providers that are vetted, that are specifically trained to take care of first responders. They are psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, mental health experts.
Mm-hmm.
And we plug them into that system and get them whatever help they need so that they can come back to work as a whole person. And so they don't take that baggage home and either destroy themselves or their family or both.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause it's a cliche in first responders that, they're just, their relationships are destroyed. They have addiction problems. They end up leaving the career, or suicide is a huge thing in first responders because they get into such a dark place they can't find a way out. And so we want to change that paradigm, and it's going to take a lot of work, and it's not going to be just EMS that does it. It's got to be insurance companies. It's got to be the hospitals. It's got to be the general public to remove that stigma of mental health to the point where we will respond to it the same way we do a heart attack or a major trauma or a stroke. We have wonderful level 1 trauma centers in the state, and stroke centers and cardiac centers that we're very proud of. In fact, they put banners on the side of the hospitals that they're the #1 cardiac center in the greater Kansas City area or Columbia. But we sweep mental health under the rug.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, they're closing mental health hospitals for decades now. The tide is slowly starting to change. They're starting to open up some new facilities. They're building one in Independence, I believe, right now. And we've got some mental health crisis centers that are popping up around the state.
Mm-hmm.
The funding is starting to flow a little better. Insurance companies are kind of getting on board a little bit with it. So for the longest time, they just wouldn't pay for it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say myself, I had a terrible viewpoint of mental health for a lot of years. It's like, kind of roll your eyes. You're like, oh, okay, you're suicidal. Come on, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'd stick them in the ER for 6 hours, and they'd have somebody sit there and watch them, and then they'd just let them go. Or they'd pump their stomach if they had swallowed some pills, or they'd bandage their wrist if they'd tried to kill themselves, and send them on home with no plan to help them. And many times we lose those people.
Yeah.
And the paradigm has got to shift. The mindset has got to shift.
Yeah.
And it starts with removing that stigma, making it normal to talk about. It doesn't represent weakness to talk about it. In fact, it takes a lot of strength to come and say, hey, I need some help, or I'm struggling. And it's going to be a long road to make it better, but we've got to do it, and we've got to do it collectively.
It doesn't happen overnight. And I think, we could all say that the world is a different place than it was 20 years ago. And there are parts of that when we look at, the world, and we quickly say, it's a different place. It's changed. So our mindset changes. But mental health is one that it's like you don't accept it, that it's changed. But because of the way we live and the way we experience life through social media and just instant access to all of these things, I think certainly our approach to mental health has to change. And like you said, it doesn't happen overnight, but we have to be understanding of people that, like, if we have an interaction and maybe what you're doing is not okay, I can say that's not okay, but are you okay? How can we get you help? And that's tough.
Yeah. And it's not an easy, there's not just one magic pill or one silver bullet that's going to fix it.
Mm-mm.
And it's got to start in our schools. It's got to start with the community. It's got to start with interactions between two people. Yeah. Like you said, you got to normalize that question of, how are you doing? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Can you help? Can I help you? And then that person's got to be open to receiving that help too.
Yeah.
Because many times, especially for men, or at least for me anyway, I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Of course I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you I'm struggling.
No. And sometimes it takes that good friend to come up and say, hey, let's get you some help.
Yeah. And I think what we have to understand and start to accept is, like, if I talk to you, it's not with the intention that maybe you can solve my problem, because you don't have the answers for everything that I'm dealing with. But if you just listen, sometimes that just releases enough pressure in your own brain where you're able to make clearer choices.
Mm-hmm.
And that's tough.
Yeah, and I think we're so connected right now, but so disconnected at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Just got back from a trip overseas, and it's amazing to walk through the airport and see hundreds and hundreds of people, and all of them are on their phones,
Mm-hmm.
not interacting with anybody.
Yeah.
Or you see families and the kids are on their tablets. And I'm not saying the tablets are bad. My daughter has one too, but it's got strict limits on it, time limits, and then content limits. And I think we need to put our devices away and get back to that face-to-face interaction with each other,
Yeah.
especially our children, because they spend so much time on their devices and they have unfiltered access to the entire world if we're not careful. And they can feel really, really lost. And if we give our kids their devices at too young of an age, it can actually change their brain physiology to where their hormones are changed, to where if you've ever had a child that you try to take their phone away from them or their tablet, they go through real withdrawal symptoms. Like it's almost like an addiction. So you've got to set limits on that, and you've got to get back to having dinner around the table or going to the coffee shop and talking to the old guys around a table for an hour, and putting your phones away.
Yeah.
And just interacting with an actual human.
And I think about our school, and this year, they've began where there's a no cell phone policy, and they said it's been such a blessing, such a enriching experience for the kids and the faculty, because at moments that maybe used to be overlooked, like setting at a lunch table or in interactions in the hallway, with phones completely removed, they have seen kids that didn't talk before speaking, laughter that wasn't there before occurring, people making choices to gather people around a table and play cards when they have free time rather than just stare at that screen. And that is huge. That's a big thing, I think, for our kids.
Yeah.
Oh man, so much here. I'll make sure I don't miss anything, Matt. We've talked about the EMS and the Elks. Upcoming, so you're involved with the Missouri Ambulance Association.
Correct.
And I think, if I remember, starting in January, you're going to be the president of that association. Or tell us a little bit about that. What is that association?
So I think we're going to be celebrating our 35th year. I need to double check that. 35th or 40th year now. And it's a statewide association. There's several statewide associations. One is ADAM, one is MEMSA, one is MAA. We also have one that's specific to air ambulances called MOAMS. And while we all have our specialty, we're all kind of pulling in the same direction to improve EMS across the state and across the nation, actually. We go to Washington, D.C. once a year, too. And MAA and MEMSA are kind of the largest ones. And MAA's specialty is education, leadership for the top admin, the chiefs, the shift leaders, things like that. Whereas MEMSA is more of the clinicians, the nurses, the paramedics, the EMTs, do more of the clinical education side. But together we all pull forward to better EMS. MAA has a lot of focus in legislative change. We have a full legislative committee, which I'm part of, and we lobby for things. We have a great lobbyist that goes to Jeff City. And then through the NAEMT on a national level, we also do the same at Washington, D.C. every year. And I think that that's where the rubber meets the road with a lot of things, is legislative change. That's where a big impact can be made. Because if the laws aren't there, then we're just spinning our wheels. And we covered different topics, from mental health is a big one over the last couple of years, critical access, hospitals staying open, funding, insurance, working with insurance companies to increase reimbursement, changing tax law so that we can actually fund what we do. And EMS we're a very young profession. We've only been around since the mid-'70s, and officially anyway. And so we really don't have that robust, rich history like, say, nursing does. Nursing's been around for over 100 years. They've got a great lobby. EMS is really just kind of learning to do that right now. And we're stuck in a reimbursement model that was started in the 70s and hasn't changed much since then. If you remember back in the old days, a lot of the funeral homes would run an ambulance. And depending on your condition, you either went to the hospital or you went to the funeral home. Kind of a conflict of interest there. But in the 70s, they officially stood EMS up as a standalone entity. And we're listed in the federal procurement system as a supplier. So we're no different than the guy that supplies oxygen or a wheelchair or a needle or a scalpel. We only get paid when our wheels are turning. And so we're essentially, in the federal eyes, we're a taxi. We're just transport. So we really need to change that at the national legislative level so that we can be reimbursed as providers, just like doctors and nurses and hospitals, things like that. So as a supplier, we're kind of kicked out of a lot of funding funnels from the federal side. Missouri's done a great job of changing that at a state level, but we're still kind of stuck there at the national level. One of the good things that came out of COVID is that we were able to demonstrate that, hey, we're also really good at taking care of patients, and we can take care of them in their home. We don't have to transport, because our hospitals were overflowing during COVID and we couldn't transport anybody. So we ended up, out of necessity, having to take care of them in their homes. And so through that really tough period of time, we were able to go to the federal government and say, hey, we can do this in a patient's home and maybe have them have better health overall and decompress the hospitals to where they're not seeing the same patients over and over again for the same things. So it's slowly changing. We have what's referred to as mobile integrated health or community paramedic. Starting January 1st, we'll have a program here in Lynn County. And through that, we'll be able to treat that patient in their own home and working closely with their primary care physician to improve their health. And I'll just take one example, a diabetic that is non-compliant. They're constantly getting transported by the ambulance to the local hospital because their sugars are out of whack, or say they have a wound on their foot that just won't heal. And so they're constantly going to the ER, they're constantly getting sent to an ICU for sepsis. They may end up losing a leg or an arm. And so there's tens of thousands of dollars wrapped up in that process. So if we can fill that gap early enough in their treatment and monitor their blood sugar at home, give them some tips on nutrition, even just walking through their home and looking for safety risks, like, hey, maybe we get rid of these rugs so you're not tripping and falling. Or maybe we move this so you're not bumping your foot on it and cutting your toe and then ending up with a wound that's not healing. Or we come and take care of that wound and we bandage it and we make sure it's clean and we make sure they don't get back into the ICU for sepsis in 2 weeks. And then that saves the whole system tens of thousands of dollars, plus it improves the health of that patient. And maybe they're around in the community for another couple decades as a productive member. So that's our goal with that. And the insurance companies have kind of perked up and they're like, hey, we can see the savings in this. So now that they're on board, now the wheels are turning faster and the funding is opening up. Grant money was primarily the way that a lot of departments funded that for several years, or out of their general fund. St. Charles County is a good example in this state. They've been doing it for almost a decade now, doing a very good job of it. I think now, several months ago, there were 16. I think we're up to now maybe 20 programs in the state. And then this next year, I hope that will double. Wow. But I'm really excited about that. And it's really going to improve the overall health of the entire community.
Wow. That's a lot to unpack there, but something that kind of sticks out is for me, it started with a focus on your community, which led to working through the state of how to, keep improving, and then, okay, well, nationally. So community focus has spread to the national level to make a change for everyone. Um, I think it's really cool that right here in Brookfield, you're going to have the president of that organization. Did you ever see yourself as being the president of something like that?
No, not at all. Early in my career, I was very focused on titles and position, but that went away pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And now I just try to do the best job I can every day, take care of my people, take the best care of our patients as we can. And through that hard work, the positions, the titles, recognition will come as long as you're focused on the fundamentals. You're just doing the best job you can, caring.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Looking at that organization, the Lynn County Ambulance District, your personal business, a lot going on there. Where do you see this stuff in 5 years, 10 years?
I would really hope to see, like we talked about mental health, I'd like that to be a main focus in 5 years. I'd also like to see a exponential improvement in the way that we handle cardiac arrest and community paramedic. Cardiac arrest has been a focus of ours for the last 2 years. Nationally, the likelihood of surviving an out-of-hospital adult cardiac arrest was somewhere around the 9% range. And if you look at healthcare, or really anything, if we were failing 91% of the time at what we were doing, we wouldn't say we were doing a good job, right? If I started an IV and 91% of the time I failed, they'd send me back to school. Like, hey, you need to go train some more. If I gave the wrong medication 90% of the time, I would lose my license. But cardiac arrest is something that we just kind of take in stride. We're like, oh, well, 9%, good job.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that we have to change. And so if you go on our website, we've got a tab on there that says ACR, which stands for Advanced Cardiac Resuscitation. And our goal over the last few years and into the future is to improve that survivability. And it's a multifaceted approach. It starts with training. It starts with equipment. We've added multiple AEDs around the county. There's also a tab on that website to be able to see where the AEDs in the county are located. And then if you put one in your business, you can take a picture of it, put it on that website, and people can pull it up on their phones. And getting those out in the community and then getting the community trained on hands-only CPR and how to respond to cardiac arrest is going to be a game changer. Because in most places, your response time, if you're really quick, is going to be around 10 minutes. And if you've got somebody whose heart isn't beating for 10 minutes, I mean, you're unlikely to survive that, at least not neuro intact with all of your faculties. So we've got to shorten that amount of time, whether it's the family at home that identifies it and starts CPR, or it's your first responders in your fire department that get there, police departments that get there, and perform high quality CPR until the ambulance arrives. That's going to be what increases that survivability.
Wow.
We've got to do it. And through several community organizations and grants, we've been able to do that, and we'll continue for the next decade.
Wow. That's something we don't think about and could hit any of us at any moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really cool passion that you have there as well. I mean, you've said in what you sent that time is our most valuable commodity. So what I wanted to ask was, how do you decide what's worth your time?
It's a good question. We all just have 24 hours in a day, and we've got to prioritize our self-care. So you got to have some sleep, you got to have some time for you. And the rest of the time you get to decide how to spend it. It's like a wallet that gets refilled every single day, and you can waste it. You can spend too much time on something. You can spend not enough time on something. And you have to constantly be checking in with yourself and budgeting that time.
Mm-hmm.
Is this giving me what I need to be successful? Is my time being spent in a way that is benefiting my family, my business, my team, my company? Um, do I need to rebudget certain things? Instead of watching an hour-long TV show, maybe I go to the gym, or maybe I sit in color with my daughter, or I go and have dinner with my crew. There's a lot of different ways to spend that check each day, and we've got to figure out the best way to do it. And the great thing about it is we get a refill every single day.
Every day is a new opportunity.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm big on that. I believe, if you're given 24 hours, schedule that whole 24 hours. Figure all that out.
Mm-hmm.
If someone listening is stuck in something they don't feel is for them, what's your advice to them?
Do the best that you can at whatever you're doing, because that is noble in my mind. If you're going to do anything, do it to the best of your ability. At the same time, if it's not fulfilling your cup, so to speak, you're not passionate about it, then start doing something a little bit each day that does fill your passion. Maybe it starts out as a hobby. Knowing yourself is so very important. And unfortunately, we spend a lot of time in our youth, wasting our youth, not really knowing ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can find something that we are innately good at and then align it with a passion, then there's really no way that you're not going to be successful.
Yeah.
And now how you measure that success is going to be subjective. Maybe it's a paycheck, maybe it's, fulfilling your passion or whatever that is. But if you do that, you'll really struggle to not be successful.
Yeah. Very true. We kind of get towards the end here and we give everyone an opportunity to say it with their chest. And I'm looking for things that people stand behind 100%. It's important to you. It doesn't even have to be about anything we've discussed today. So what do you want people to remember about Matt and what was important to him?
That's also a very good question. So I think about this a lot, and I am determined when I am done with this life that people will look back and say that I made a difference in EMS. It is something that I feel like I was meant to do, and I want to make it better. And if I'm successful at doing that, I will have led a good life.
Yeah.
Make a difference in somebody's life every day. And I think that is how I would measure my success.
Yeah. It's just overlooked. It's overlooked how important these daily interactions you have with people are. We talk about making someone smile every day, giving back to your community, on and on and on, and all these episodes that I've had on this show. And I think one of the biggest messages from what I've heard you talk about today is how these little 5-minute snippets you have with someone can totally change our life.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
And I think what you're doing here is impactful too. I don't think people would have the opportunity to hear from your guests without this.
Well,
and I hope
you.
people see it and either do one themselves or are inspired by it. And I think that's really where a huge impact can come from it.
I hope so. And so many people I've talked to, they're like, what would I talk about? I couldn't, why would you want me on your show? And you just don't understand. Like, people are probably watching people in the community every day, and you don't even realize you're making an impact. But we all have a story, and I feel like just through living here and my experiences, there's so many people that we don't know about. Mm-hmm. So people like you and I'm just hopeful that it makes a small impact somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much.
Oh, I really appreciate the invite.
Yeah, thank you. I know you're a busy guy. I think anyone watching will understand you've got a lot of irons in the fire. That's certainly something I can understand, and I appreciate you taking time out to come talk to us, because you're doing a lot of things in our community in our state that make a huge impact. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah. If you guys want to be involved with the Elks, get to know a member. Is there any way people can be involved with the, things you're trying to do for the ambulance district or the community?
Yeah, absolutely. We have an EMT class and a paramedic class that'll be starting in the next few months. If you're interested in that, if it's something you're passionate about or maybe just curious about, come and take the class. The EMT class lasts about 6 months. You're going to spend at least a year in the paramedic class. You've got to have the EMT first.
Uh-huh.
So you're looking at a 1.5 year commitment at least. But you could dip your toe in with an EMT class and see if it's for you.
Wow.
And we have scholarship options. We have some funding out there to help pay for it. The paramedic course that'll be starting in January, we will have a remote option where you can attend the class through Kirksville here at our base, so you don't have to travel. And it's
Wow.
pretty exciting. And we'll have at least one of those a year. So, yeah, reach out and we'll get you plugged into the system.
Very cool. So, there's probably someone right here in the community, maybe a young person. You don't have to be a young person, but they could choose to go through a course like that and totally alter not only their life, but the life of someone in need down the road.
Mm-hmm.
That's really powerful.
Yep.
Again, thank you so much. I've learned a lot about you. I already respected you a ton, but even more so now, knowing all you do. So thank you so
I
much.
appreciate that, Nathan.
That's it for us today, guys. Thank you so much. See ya.
That's going to do it for this week of That Stuff Matters. Come back next week. Who knows what trouble we'll get into. If there's somebody you would like to see on the show, message me. Let me know about it. Have a great week, everybody.
That stuff matters.